What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? We have a special guest on the show today. Michael Darcy, how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you for coming on, making time to hop on the show here. We've been getting on some different people on the show last few weeks, and it's been great. And Nazi Johnson was on a few weeks ago. We had
Wow.
yeah, we had Lexi Osborne on a couple days ago. So we're making some good progress and getting some good people on. But for the first question, how long do you think Rashee Rice is going to be suspended?
It's really interesting because we just saw, more developments come out in that story. Initially, he fled the scene, and there was a lot of speculation as to whether or not it was Rashee Rice at the scene. TMZ came out with their photos, making it pretty clear that Rashee Rice was there. And we just got the charges list that Rashee Rice got charged with. It's like 8 different counts of, assault from that car accident. So I think there's going to be a pretty hefty suspension by the NFL just because this is conduct that they just don't want to accept. And for good reason. I mean, Rashee Rice, did about exactly what you cannot do. And it's like a Henry Ruggs situation, but he got lucky that he didn't end up, costing anybody their life. I think he probably ends up getting anywhere from 4 to 6 games. And, in the past, we've seen suspensions from the NFL take some time to, really come to fruition. Like it might take a couple more months till these charges get settled in the courtroom for the NFL to charge Rashee Rice with a suspension. So I think 4 to 6 games is probably the right ballpark estimate of how long he will be suspended, but expect him to get suspended after the charges get finalized.
Yeah, I'm expecting him to get. My guess is I said a 5 game suspension, and it's unfortunate he that we're having to talk about this, but he's quite lucky because he could be in a Henry Ruggs situation and be in prison. So he's
Yeah.
lucky that all he's looking at is a couple game suspension from the NFL, most likely. Um,
Absolutely.
uh,
And I think one thing that we don't really talk about is he's still on a rookie contract. And the fact that he rented the Lamborghini and absolutely totaled that car and the car accident and the damages that he's going to have to pay, he's basically going to be playing football for free for the next couple seasons because he
yeah,
doesn't have the money of a Tyreek Hill or a Travis Kelsey who could get in these kind of situations and be okay financially. His signing bonus was not that high in the second round, and his contract, I mean, he's making more than the average American, but he just did something that is going to cost him a lot of money. So Rashee Rice made a really big financial mistake on top of what happened, but hopefully this kind of thing never happens again because one more incident with Rashee Rice, and I'm not so confident that he's going to be on this team.
yeah. Well, to be honest, I don't know how Kadarius Toney is still on this team after what he just his attitude. It's horrible. And then talking bad about the Chiefs a couple months ago before the AFC Championship game. I quite frankly, I kept saying I thought the Chiefs were gonna release or trade Kadarius Toney, and I think the Chiefs are gonna keep Rashee Rice. He's just gonna get hit with a little suspension, but hopefully he learns from this because we need him on this team. The receiver room is still a little. I don't know about it. I mean, Hollywood Brown, I think he can do great here, and I think the Chiefs should probably draft a wide receiver in the first round
Yeah.
again. But speaking of draft now, who should the Chiefs draft in the first round? Offensive tackle or wide receiver?
I think with the Rashee Rice situation, you have to draft a wide receiver. I've seen some mocks where the Chiefs trade up to draft a wide receiver. I think it's basically common knowledge that the Chiefs are going to draft a wide receiver in round one, and if they don't, they better in round two. But I think with the Rashee Rice situation and possible suspension looming for half the season, you need to draft a wide receiver that could come in and play right away. And I think that's why they would draft a wide receiver in round one. I also don't think that drafting a tackle in round one, unless you're drafting within the top 15, would really be worth a first round selection. And I think that a wide receiver, it makes your team better. It fills a position of need. And, you could find another tackle in free agency. And I think that they're okay with Wanye Morris starting to begin the season. Maybe you draft somebody in the third round and kind of have him sit behind Morris, or, maybe they fight for who's going to be the starting left tackle. But I think the Chiefs will be okay.
Well, I'm all on board for the Chiefs getting a wide receiver. I really, really like Ladd McConkey just a lot. A lot of people hate me for saying this, but I love Ladd McConkey so much. And, that's who I want them to select with the 32nd pick. And I think, to your point, I think the Chiefs would like to possibly trade up. They wanted to do it last year too, but I'm about 99.2% sure they ain't going to be able to, because nobody's trying to trade with the Chiefs, because nobody likes the Chiefs now. The Chiefs won Super Bowl 54. Everybody liked it. It was cool. And now people don't like the dynasty. They're tired of seeing us win. So I doubt they'll be able to trade up. I think they'll probably try, but they couldn't even. I think they tried to trade with the Cowboys last year, and they couldn't even trade up with an NFC team. So it's going to be difficult. But in Veach we trust, right? So just let him take care of it. But a guy that I would like Veach to possibly sign, and a guy that's not getting talked about a lot, in my opinion. I know he has some injury stuff, but that's New York Jets free agent now, I believe, Mekhi Becton. He's not getting talked about a lot, and I feel he could come in here on a cheap deal and play for the Chiefs at tackle. Whether that's left tackle or you move Jawan to left tackle and have Mekhi at right tackle.
Is Becton still a free agent?
I believe he is.
I don't know if he went back to the Jets or not. If he didn't, I mean, there's a reason why he's still a free agent. He really struggled in New York. Donovan Smith is still out there. I know that that's a name that a lot of Chiefs fans, would love to see come back. I don't really know. I feel like Donovan Smith is a good stopgap left tackle. Like, he's somebody that's going to fill in for, a season or two, but he's not your answer for the foreseeable future. The Chiefs thought they had their answer in Orlando Brown Jr., and they refused to pay him. So he ended up going to Cincinnati. But I think the Chiefs are going to have to address that need, maybe not this year, but definitely next year, of a left tackle of the future that is going to be there for the next 5 to 7 years. Like, I think that's what the Chiefs made the biggest decision, or the biggest mistake in signing Jawan Taylor is, you got your right tackle. That's great. But you paid him a ton of money when you should have paid that money to a left tackle. Yep. And like a right tackle, you had Austin Reiter, like, starting at right tackle in the Super Bowl. So, or was Austin Reiter the center? Andrew Wiley, rather. He was that right tackle in the Super Bowl, and you were just fine. So it's like you need to really spend resources to address the left tackle position, and they've done a lot to address the right tackle, but just not so much the left.
With right, and Mekhi Becton is still free agent, so that is a guy that I think the Chiefs should possibly look into. He's a guy that I want them to look into. But for right tackle, they gave him an $80 million deal for Jawan Taylor. Mahomes, you don't really need a great right tackle. You can have a player like Donovan Smith over that right tackle. What you need is a good left tackle. That's Mahomes' blind side. He's in his prime. He's going to play the best he's ever played. We need somebody over there protecting him. And Wanye Morris, in my opinion, I don't know if I'm comfortable with that yet, because he didn't really show that he was ready for that yet. I think he could possibly be that guy in a couple of years, but I think he needs to sit back a few more years. Donovan Smith, quite frankly, I'm not comfortable with him either, but that's really all you got right now. And I would pick Donovan Smith over Wanye Morris just because of the experience.
Yeah, and I think Smith or Becton or whatever left tackle or free agent that is available right now, they're not going to go until after the draft. They're going to sign some 1 or maybe 2 year deal right before training camp just to get onto a team. And so we're not going to see anything happen in the free agent market until after the draft. Usually right now they're prepping for the draft, and after the draft there's a surge of free agents, but we're not going to see Smith go before the draft.
Yeah, I don't expect him to go before the draft either, but the Chiefs should definitely look into Donovan Smith or Mekhi Becton, who I think, he has potential. I know he has his injuries here and there, but he's still young. Bring him into Kansas City. I'm sure they could shape him up. I'm not sure what he really did in New York. I didn't watch him too much, but I do know he's young. He don't get talked about enough, and I think he could help this offensive line tremendously. How many more years do you think Patrick Mahomes is going to play in this league?
Ooh, he's what? No. He's like 28, isn't he? He's 28.
28.
He could play another. I mean, let's just say conservatively that he plays till 40. That's 12 more years. I could see at that time, 12 more years. Let's say he's sitting at 6 Super Bowls. That's a really good chance that, throughout the next 12 seasons, he gets 3 Super Bowls, which is crazy that we're talking about that, but I think it's a safe bet. If he's at 6 at 40, why would he not try to play a couple more seasons and
he's gotta pass
get 7 or get 8? I know that we're, talking crazy and it's not that easy to win Super Bowls, but Patrick Mahomes has won 3 in his first 6 or 7 seasons as a starter. I mean, they're on a great path and a great trajectory to do that. So I think it really depends where he's at 40. If he's at 40 and he hasn't gotten hurt yet and he's still in pretty good shape, I know he puts a lot of resources into taking care of himself in the offseason and with his trainer, Bob Strope. But I really do think that, he could play into his 40s. He could be 43, 44. Now, he might not want to go as long as Brady, but I do think he has that competitiveness. And if he gets close to Tom's record, I could definitely see him sticking around to break it. This is barring injuries and whatnot, but, I think guaranteed at least 12 more seasons. So a decade and change of Patrick Mahomes, and we'll probably get more.
Mahomes was close to having, a couple mistakes that could have been prevented. Mahomes could have 5 Super Bowls right now. Super Bowl 55. What if the Chiefs had a better offensive line? They might have been able to win that. That's 4 Super Bowls for him. 2018? Dee Ford lined up offsides against the Patriots.
Yeah,
that could have been another one. They could have gone to the Super Bowl and got another one. That's 5 for Patrick. So, I've said this. I bring that up with everybody, but it's not out of this world for Patrick to get 7, 8 Super Bowls. And I told Najee Johnson that before Patrick and everybody retires, we got to get 10 Super Bowls, and he thought I was crazy, but he said it's not doable, but he's very confident in the 3-peat, and he knows they can do that.
Really? So that's going to be difficult because I know that we're talking about 3-peat, and I hope that the 3-peat doesn't become what running it back was, because I remember in 2021 they're coming off of the Super Bowl against the Niners, and they were like, we're going to run this thing back. And honestly, that might have been the best Chiefs team that I've seen. I mean, defensively, they weren't as good as they were last year, but offensively, they scored at will. They ran through the regular season. They lost 2 games. They lost to the Raiders at home. They shouldn't have lost that game. And then they lost to the Chargers in like week 16 or 17.
And Mahomes was out because they were resting the starters.
They rested starters because they were so dominant. And they ran through the playoffs. They beat Buffalo by multiple scores in the AFC Championship game. And then in the Super Bowl with your offensive line in shambles, you lost it. So, I mean, yeah, he could have had, another Super Bowl. But I do think that the Chiefs are going to face some adversity this year. They just are. They're going to have, wide receivers out due to suspension. And they might have some growing pains on defense without L'Jarius Sneed. But I do think they're going to know what it takes. They obviously won the last 2 Super Bowls, but it's incredibly hard to win 3 in a row. And if they could win 3 in a row, they're immediately the best team in NFL history.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's never been done before. A 2-peat's been done before, so we're like, yay, this is cool, back to back. But 3-peat's never been done before, so a 3-peat. I've been thinking, where am I going to put this 3-peat flag at? I'm waiting. Hopefully, they can get it done so I can make some room on that wall for that. And I'm very confident in them doing a three-peat. They're just I know Charles Omenihu's going to be a little banged up. I don't think he'll be here till mid-season probably. You lost Snead, but I fully expect Jalen Watson and Joshua Williams and Najee Johnson to be able to step up, and I think we'll be just fine. We might have a couple of weeks where you gotta get used to not having Snead, but I think around midseason, I think that defense can get back to normal.
I
How do you
agree.
feel about Matt Nagy going into year two?
Um, you know, my do you remember last year when a lot of people got upset with Connor Embry, the wide receiver coach?
I'm still mad at him, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how much Matt Nagy actually has to do with anything in this offense. I think Coach Reed is the one that draws up the plays. I know he calls the plays. And so Matt Nagy is just a glorified assistant. And so I don't really care so much about, Matt Nagy. In the beginning, I was frustrated because I didn't want him to be our OC. I didn't want that at all. But the one good thing about him being the OC is that Patrick Mahomes has a really good relationship with him. And that goes back to when, Nagy was here the first time and Patrick Mahomes was a young quarterback. So I don't have a problem with Matt Nagy really, but I do think that, if they want Nagy to be the coach after Andy Reid retires, I would be frustrated. I do not think that would go very well.
I want Steve Spagnuolo to take over once Andy Reid retires. I think that just make the most sense. Keep a guy that knows this team, and but Connor Embry. Here's what I didn't like. I didn't like that they had I believe Connor Embry. He was some sort of defensive coach. I didn't like how they moved him to coach up our wide receivers. But it's so difficult to tell. Is it the wide receiver's fault or the coach's fault? Because yeah, we got Matt Nagy. He was a new OC for us for the first year, and yeah, you got a defensive assistant who's coaching our wide receivers. But our wide receivers are also Marquez Valdez-Scantling. They were Kadarius Toney. They were Sky Moore. Not great names. So it's very difficult to tell. But I think it's a mixture. I think the coaching. I think they could have done a little better coaching, but I think Brett Veach could have done a little better job last offseason and bringing in a receiver for Pat Mahomes other than saying go play with what you got. Because, that's really what Brett Veach did. I thank him for getting Rashee Rice because without Rashee Rice, oh my God. But,
Yeah.
I think what the Chiefs did last offseason was just say, hey, Mahomes, go play with what you got. And this offseason, they brought in Hollywood Brown, so I'm happy for that.
I still kind of wonder if the Chiefs are getting a little too complacent because defensively they had a chance to upgrade at some positions like defensive tackle, and they re-signed Mike Pennell, they re-signed Derek Nottie, and I think they brought back Tershawn Wharton. And while those are good players, they've won 2 Super Bowls. It's almost like you could have upgraded that position, but the Chiefs were complacent and said, you know what? We believe that our system and our guys are good enough to get it done. And hey, they've won 2 Super Bowls consecutively, so what do I know? But I think they probably could have upgraded a defensive tackle just because out of the entire defense last year, your defensive tackle's ability to stop the run was the biggest weakness, I guess. It still wasn't a glaring weakness, but it was a problem at one point. And I think that they could have upgraded, but they didn't. So that's a bit frustrating. But again, they're confident that they have the guys to do it, and I gotta trust in Veach.
You gotta trust in him, even though it looks very rough at times. Even though I do get upset with him a lot, but at the end of the day, this man has brought in 3 Super Bowls for us. He sometimes knows what he's doing, I think, and he's a genius in drafting corners. That's one thing about him. He knows how to draft corners in late rounds, so that's something good about him. But in regards to signing receivers, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, he did great the first year, but that was the only really thing he did. He sealed it up in the playoffs for us, and I thank him for that. Marquez Valdez-Scantling stepped up against the Bills. He stepped up against the Ravens. But other than that, he dropped passes this season. So, and I was all for Marquez Valdez-Scantling staying this season, but not on the contract he had.
Yeah.
I said I didn't mind if he stayed, but he needed to take a pay cut, and I don't know if he didn't want to. I don't know if the Chiefs decided to just say, "Hey, don't want you here. You drop too much passes," and so he did some good things, but
Yeah.
not good enough to pay him on the big contract he had.
Yeah, I agree. And you got to get some more youth in the wide receiver room, and they got that with Hollywood Brown, and they're going to draft somebody, and then Rashee Rice is pretty young, so they've got a lot of young and talented pieces that are going to come in, and I think they're already in better shape than they were last year. But I also think for the wide receiver room being as bad as it was last year, I think Brett Veach in the front office thought guys like Kadarius Toney and Marquez Valdes-Scantling were going to take a jump, and they reverted to their worst football that they've ever played. And I don't think that they were expecting that. And I almost wonder what the role of Kadarius Toney is going to be, because he's still on the team. I don't know what he's going to do, but he's still on the team. And so he's going to have a chance at redemption. But, yeah, it's interesting to see what the Chiefs are going to do in the draft. Hopefully they get a wide receiver. And if they do that, I think we're going to be in good shape.
If Kadarius Toney is healthy, I think he has potential to be dangerous. Problem is, he's not healthy. He usually never is. That's his problem. He needs to figure out how to stay healthy. If he can stay healthy, I'm all for him possibly being able to get 600 receiving yards this season. He has to just stay healthy. That's his biggest thing. And then also his attitude. He needs to make sure he maintains that attitude because I think he was close to getting cut with his little stint of saying the Chiefs were lying about his injuries. How much more involved do you think Felix Anudike-Uzomah is going to be defensively this season?
He's going to have to be, I think, in the beginning of the season, because without Omenihu for the first, his injury is pretty bad, and it happened really late in the season against the Ravens. So I think he might have, 8 or 9 weeks under his belt by the time that Omenihu comes back. Your only other defensive end, you have Mike Dana and George Karlaftis, and you just signed Dana to a 3-year deal. I would hope that they put Felix in more. I think this is definitely his time to step up and prove that he could be something. He didn't play a lot last year, but I almost think that he's forced to take a bigger role just because injuries to the defensive line. And hopefully he takes that opportunity and makes the most of it, because in the NFL, you don't get a ton of opportunities. And he didn't play a lot last year. And so if he plays this year and he isn't very good, we're going to have the same discussions about, Felix that we did about Sky Moore. And that's kind of that he didn't live up to the potential, and, he isn't worth the spot.
A lot of people were already starting that discussion, halfway through last season, but I'm not quite there yet. I think, he really didn't play a lot. So you can't say he's a bust. I'm not quite I can't quite remember. Do you remember why he didn't play a lot? I can't quite remember.
I just don't think they thought he was ready. I think they thought they had other guys that were better, and they definitely did, because the defensive line was really good. Omenihu came in and was, electric after the 6-game suspension. So I think that he just didn't fit in because he wasn't good enough. And so hopefully, with a full off season, and after he's seen what the NFL is like for a season in his rookie season, he's going to have a chance to play. But George Karlaftis started in his rookie season and down the stretch had a really good, 8 or 9 game stretch. Felix did not have that. And that is a bit concerning.
It is. It is a little concerning, but I got to see him play a lot more games before I can even, if he don't have at least 5 sacks, I'll say if he don't have at least 5 sacks, then this season, then I'll probably say, I'll probably start getting a little concerned there. But if he gets at least 5 sacks, then build on next year, get 7, and keep building. I think, I don't know. I think FAU has potential, but so far I don't know what that potential quite is yet. But this is the next topic. This is the guy that the Chiefs let go in free agency last year, signed with the Jets, and then Chiefs traded right back for him at week 8. Little did we know this was the guy that was going to catch the game-winning Super Bowl 58 touchdown. Should they bring McCole Hardman back? He's a free agent.
No. I am perfectly fine with letting Mecole Hardman ride off into the sunset with that catch. Let that be the final catch of Mecole Hardman's career in Kansas City. Listen, I'll always love that catch for what it's worth, and he won us that Super Bowl. Could I have caught that ball if I was out there? Yeah, I think most people could. But Mecole Hardman is a guy that really never lived up to the full expectations that were put on him. They let him go to the Jets, couldn't find playing time on the Jets, traded an asset to get him back. There's a reason why he's not signed right now. I think the Chiefs are – I mean, if we go back 2 weeks before that Super Bowl, or maybe it was 3 weeks. Yeah, 3 weeks. Against Buffalo, he fumbles at the goal line. And if the Chiefs would have lost that game, he would have been the reason. So, I mean, Mecole Hardman was making those kind of bonehead plays all postseason long. And he's never really been the guy that has been, I guess, in sync with Patrick Mahomes. They've always had communication problems. And at a certain point, I know it's not the Hall of Fame quarterback. I know it's you, Mecole. And so I'm perfectly fine with letting him go somewhere else in free agency. And that's assuming that he will find somewhere else to go.
I wouldn't be mad if the Chiefs don't bring him back because it's not like he's this great receiver. He's just a rotational receiver, the fourth string receiver probably. So I wouldn't be mad if they don't bring him back, but I wouldn't be mad if they did bring him back. I could see them bringing him back for a cheap deal on just for depth and to try and help the rookie receivers that I'm assuming they draft in the first round. So I wouldn't be mad if they brought him back. I kind of want them to bring him back as long as it's a 1 year cheap deal. But if he's trying to get a lot of money, he can go somewhere else. Should the Chiefs sign Tyler Boyd?
Yeah. I don't know why he hasn't gotten picked up yet. And I think right now, Tyler Boyd's not a 1, and he might not be a 2. But for this Chiefs wide receiver core that right now is really only working with Rashee Rice, who knows with Rashee Rice, Rashee Rice and Hollywood Brown, who's a rental, you might as well go out and get Boyd just to make sure that if you bust in the draft, you don't get anybody, that you have another wide receiver that can get you 700 yards if he has to. I think that's probably the best case scenario. And the fact that he hasn't signed yet, kind of surprising. He's probably going to go back to Cincinnati. I think that's probably what's going to happen after the draft. But I would love to steal Boyd from Cincinnati.
I'm not opposed to it. Again, I think it would need to be it doesn't have to be a cheap deal, but it needs to be somewhat of a cheaper deal. And I think Tyler Boyd, I think he would possibly be okay with taking a bit of a pay cut to come here and, compete for a Super Bowl and play with a Hall of Fame quarterback. Because I do believe the Bengals are probably going to end up trading T. Higgins. So it'd be most likely that Boyd goes back to Cincinnati. But we'll just have to see. I'm hoping they just draft Ladd McConkey. But Tyler Boyd, Mecole Hardman, not opposed to it. Well, for the last question, there were multiple teams that made the playoffs last year. What teams that made the playoffs last year do you think don't make it this year?
I don't think Buffalo makes it.
I'm going Bills. Yep.
I think Buffalo really struggles. And that was even before they traded Stephon Diggs. And now I think they're cooked.
And they got rid of so much defensively. So much.
I can tell you for sure, I don't think the Ravens aren't going to be as good. I'm trying to think. Who in the NFC made it that I'm like, I'm not really.
Packers? I think they'll make it again.
They'll probably make it again. Who else in the NFC? Do you know?
Eagles, 49ers. I think the Eagles are starting a downfall. They might make it this year, but I think the next few years, I think they're going to downfall. Eagles, 49ers, Packers.
Eagles would not be a bad pick for missing it. Something about the Lions. I want the Lions to make it, but I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of had a 1-year wonder. and then
That
reverted.
would be the Detroit Lion thing to do, though, is to be that good and then screw everything up. Yeah.
And they were literally blowing out the Niners in the NFC Championship game, and they choked. So
Yep.
I think definitely in the AFC, the Bills. I think the Bills are really going to struggle. And Eagles is not a bad pick. Their coach, Nick Sirianni, not a lot of Chiefs fans like him, but he's just not very good at being a head coach. I think they're going to struggle, especially with Kelsey gone. So maybe the Eagles don't make it out of the NFC.
Yeah, that's my pick. I think the Eagles don't make it, and I think the Texans. I think they'll do good. Detroit. The Texans are AFC, but I do think the Texans scare you?
Nobody scares me. The Chiefs have won 2 Super Bowls. No one scares me, but the Texans probably are the team that is on the rise that could be competing for a Super Bowl. I mean, definitely they have the pieces. Defensively, they are very good. And CJ Stroud is a really good young quarterback. And with all the weapons around him, I definitely think that they're going to be, up there in the AFC. But nobody scares me, really.
I think the Texans are the best team in the AFC behind the Chiefs. But that game that the Lions blew against the Niners, when I was watching that, right after the Chiefs sealed their victory against Baltimore, I got PTSD from the Chiefs and Bengals AFC Championship game a couple years ago. Ugh, that was horrible.
Yeah, it was very similar. Just all offense and no defense.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Do you want to let everybody know where they can follow your show or follow you on Twitter?
Of course. You guys can find me on social media at the Michael Darcy. And on YouTube, it's just KC Sports Report. And again, I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you for making time to come on the show. And yeah, it's been fun.
Absolutely.
Peace out, Chiefs Kingdom.